think I just thought I was on live and I wasn't on live that whole time. I thought I hit the button. I didn't hit the button, guys. I didn't hit the button. Hopefully that didn't all record. Good morning, Tucker. Good morning. I'm losing my mind here, you guys. This is the last one, though. I'm going to need to edit this probably. Hi, Riley. Hi, Nadia. Sorry, I messed that up. I literally thought I hit go live. Hi, Noah. Hi, Ariana. I was like sitting here, you guys, for 3 minutes, just like, I guess nobody's coming to class today. That's fine. I'll just start talking. Hi, Mia. Oh, and I just hadn't even hit the button. How's everybody doing? The start of week 7. This is week 7. No, Tucker, you're gonna have to, maybe post that to the Google Classroom. I hope your ponytail's as lovely as mine is. I started out with my hair down and then I decided to put it up. That makes me laugh. Tao, that's not nice. Be nice. Be kind. I'll wait for maybe a few more people to join because I'm crazy and I didn't get it figured out in time. I've been spending my morning teaching my kids and then I was grading. For these of you watching now, I want to show you guys this thing. So my mom made this. All right, so it looks cute, right? Like you can just like sit on the desk and like it just sits there. It's got all my pens for the Rocket book. But then watch this. Now I can take it with me. Isn't that so cool? Can we not be playing a game during class though? Tao? How do you even do that? Y'all are crazy. But listen, this is really the last lesson I'm doing. Okay? So, I'm going to get started and Tao's going to pay attention and not be playing Grand Theft Auto. All right, left. Now it's back to my like little thing. Isn't that so cute? My mom can sew. All right, I'm going to get rid of my picture. Riley, so I wanted to buy it too, but I was like, I don't want to pay for something to be sent from China on Etsy. No one was doing it themselves. So I sent it to my mom and I was like, Mom, do you think you can make this? And she found a YouTube tutorial for it. And she's like, you mean like this? And then she made it the next day. And then she like worked out the kinks on it. And so now she's made it for my sister and me. Ariane, I feel like you're being sarcastic. Maybe. Riley, if your sister doesn't buy it for you, maybe it can be a senior gift. Maybe. I could probably get my mom to make you one. Anyways, we can chat about that later. Because I am going to hopefully drop off your AP gifts for all of you guys soonish. All right, I'm going to get started though. And then I will hopefully edit out the whole beginning of that video. All right, so here's the week schedule, right? It really does feel like week 1000, so that's awesome. As some of you guys noticed, I really screwed up on that data analysis. So I've given you the graphs, all of them now. So let's go look at that and look at all the classwork that I have. So if you go here to classwork, these are all of the 7 assignments. There are 3 here. The the solution, visual representation, and then the text analysis. 3, and then concept explanation, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so those are all the assignments that you needed to hand in. Some of us have done a lot of them, some of us haven't done them, so make sure we get that done. Climate change, math, people still need to do. Here is all the updated. I have now added every graph that you're supposed to have on there, okay? And then experimental design is for this week, but I wanted to give it to you guys ahead of time so you guys could get done with this class. I mean, really, you could get done with everything by the end of this week. Okay, so I'll tell you about that in a second. But these are all the assignments you have to turn in. Plus, there's multiple choice and FRQ for Unit 8, multiple choice FRQ for Unit 9. So we'll talk about all of that. So right now we're doing this YouTube lesson. I will talk to you guys about invasive species, endangered species, human impact on biodiversity in a second. Tuesday, Wednesday, do what you need. Thursday, I'm going to have office hours again. Prior to Thursday, hopefully you're going to be doing the experimental design assignment, which I already have. It's right here, so let me talk about it real fast. And again, it's in classwork. You get to choose. There's 3 different scenarios that you can choose here. And again, remember this one's for the grade. You've practiced one. I've given you guys feedback. Here are some of the parts of the standard that are going to be covered. You're obviously not going to make observations, all of that, but you guys are going to have to create the research design, what you're going to measure, and all of that. So please be pretty clear on those things. You can pick the impact of invasive worm species on native species of worms, impact of fragmenting habitats on species or genetic diversity, the impact of the genetic diversity on the likelihood of extinction, all which we'll talk about today and will make a little bit more sense after the lesson. But that is the assignment. All right. The review for the unit is already posted, so please, you can send me anything and I will look at it and tell you where you're off or whatnot for Unit 9. I am going to be opening it on Thursday. That gives us over a week to get it done for seniors who are done on the 8th. I will do a review on Monday, but it'll be a Zoom, so that's why this is the last YouTube lesson. I'll do a Zoom review so you guys can ask me questions in real time. I will film it or record it so that you guys can have it if you cannot make it on Monday at 1 p.m. So guys, we really are like done basically. All right, so I will go over this and I think I figured out how to have it larger so that we can, it just takes a minute. Now, as a reminder, lots of us have done all the work. There are still a few people that need to finish Unit 3. There are still people that need to take the test for Unit 8. So, sorry, Quarter 3, Unit 8. So let's get those things done. All right. Disregard this first slide. I just didn't change it. And these do not go in order. 9.8 to 9.10. They kind of are all over the place. So extinction, you guys have heard of this before, but basically the species ceases to exist. You can go extinct, which means in just that area, or you can go full extinct, which means they're all gone. This seems crazy, like a crazy percentage, but over 99% of all species that have ever lived are now extinct. And if you think about that, we had dinosaurs, right? They're all extinct now. We had the mastodon. We had lots of organisms that we've never seen before that went extinct before you were alive, before humans were alive, all of that. So that's why that number is so big. All right, let's look at some of the terms. Endemic species. They're found only in one area, and they're very vulnerable to extinction because that means they're not found other places in the world. We do have something called background extinction, meaning there's going to be organisms that go extinct. It's just going to happen as part of the natural cycle. It's fine. It's not a big deal. The problem is when it happens at higher and higher rates. So extinctions are normally going to happen. Now, a mass extinction, we've had 5 in the past. We are said to be having our 6th mass extinction. Okay, so you know, there was the Cretaceous period one. There was when all the dinosaurs were gone. You don't have to know all of them. It's just interesting to know we've had 5. We think we're in our 6th one, which is human caused. All right. So I don't feel like going over. No, I do. I need to go over endangered species. All right. So there's 3 levels of extinction: local extinction, extirpation. I think I said the word extant earlier. I meant extirpation. I apologize. But basically, what it means is it's just gone in that local area, but it can be found other places. Ecological, the numbers are so low that it's not doing its job anymore. And then actually, the extinction you are used to thinking of is when they're just completely gone. All right, so how do we get there? How do we acknowledge them ahead of time before this is happening? Well, we have endangered and then threatened. So there are threatened species that are showing a population decline, and then we would have endangered. So there's the Endangered Species Act. They're put on a list. There are certain regulations. So when I lived in North Carolina, there was a plot of land in front of these homes, and we would go out and help make it a trail because there was a species of woodpecker that was endangered. So no one could build on that land because they lived in those trees. Kind of makes you think of Woody the Woodpecker. We're going to move on from that. All right, this is just showing the number that we have of those types of species that are endangered, threatened, near threatened, and whatnot. And it kind of makes sense in amphibians because we know amphibians are indicator species for the most part. So that would make sense that amphibians would be higher in ones that are threatened. All right, so here are some reasons why organisms would be prone to extinction. These would be ones that you would want to write down, you'd want to have listed for yourself. You're going to see these on the test. So when we say low fecundity, basically we mean they're not able to have lots of kids, all right, which we know are K species. So elephants have a long gestational period. They have 1 elephant baby per birth, per, however long they have gestation. They don't have a litter where they have multiple. Same with humans. It takes 9 months. It's a low fecundity. That means you cannot build up your species as quickly as, let's say, ants or bees or flies or frogs. So like you have a lot of tadpoles. Think about the clownfish, even though those can be endangered, but that's because of the habitat they live in. Anyways, they have lots of baby fish. A specialized niche. So the reason why a specialized niche would be an issue is because if for some reason their habitat goes away, their niche is now gone and they cannot find something else to do. They struggle, whether it be exactly what they live in, what they need to survive, their food source, the organisms that they eat and whatnot. They would not be able to survive in a new situation. Found in limited areas, again, if those limited areas are gone, they can't go someplace else. If they have a fixed migration pattern, so for instance, the salmon that we've talked about, if that fixed migration pattern gets interrupted and they're not able to go someplace else, and salmon cannot, they have to go upstream. So if there's a dam there, there's an issue. They will have a problem. If they are at the top of the food chain. Top of the food chain means that you get the least amount of energy. So there's more that you need to eat. That was on one of the questions from the FRQs before. Why do eagles need so much space in order to survive? Also, there's not many of them, right? So they require a lot of area to live, and there's not as many of them at the top of the food chain because of that energy situation. So there's going to be less in numbers anyways. If they have some type of economic value to humans, that means, so the tusks that we've talked about, or whale blubber. The pangolin is a animal that's eaten in certain countries, but they are becoming endangered and almost extinct. I want to see the pangolin was an issue in one of the viruses, but I'd have to look it up. A virus getting spread. This is just showing, talking about the different species and how they're impacted, so we're not going to spend much time on there. All right, so now those are things that are part of the organism's biology. Sometimes it's their ecological situation. These are the things that humans are doing to cause issues. Some people just say hippo, some people say hipco. I think hipco is important because the C adds the climate change. Some people say high COP. It doesn't actually matter which way you put them. But the number one issue in terms of direct impact, all right, we'll talk about the overall number one issue, which you guys already probably can tell, would be habitat destruction. Included in that is degradation and fragmentation of your habitat. But again, habitat's going to be the number one cause because A, we're doing it a lot, and B, if they don't have their habitat, then they can't survive. End of story. Invasives species is a big issue, which we'll talk about. Population growth is obviously the number one cause of all of the environmental issues. And so when I said direct cause before, population is that big underlying cause. More humans, a lot of you guys tied that in your visual representation to human population change. More humans, more pollution, more humans, more space needed, so more habitat destruction, more humans, meaning more travel, meaning more invasive species can be brought in, more humans, more use of oil and gasoline, which produces more greenhouse gases, which can cause climate change, more humans, more overexploitation, right? So that human population growth underlies all of those other problems. So it would not be considered a direct cause, but it definitely underlies all of that. All right, pollution makes sense. We could talk about the peppered moth situation that we looked at. We could talk about oil spills. All of those can cause a decline in organisms. Climate change. The main reason why climate change would be, I shouldn't say the main reason. There's a few. So we've got coral bleaching that we talked about. The water's warming. They can't make the shells because of ocean acidification. We have water rising, so there's going to be more flooding, causing loss of habitats. Also with climate change, we are having the biome shift. So that biome shifting is going to impact those species that are more prone to extinction anyways. And then overexploitation, organisms that are being impacted due to their what they have to offer, which there are going to be some photos, and I don't remember what slides are on, so I apologize ahead of time, that are somewhat grotesque. All right, so we have these native species or endemic. They live in that area, and they've lived there for a long time. We generally call the ones that are outside non-native. They can be called alien species, and then they can become invasive species that we've talked about before. Some have been moved on accident. Some have been moved intentionally on purpose. So here's one example, and I love to talk about this when we were in North Carolina because it was right on all of our highways. All the students had seen it. So kudzu, it's got a cool name, but it's this big leafy vine. And the idea was that it was brought over, they had some plant conference, and they saw it, and it grows rapidly, and it was going to be used for erosion control. That's great. It started taking over everything. And as you can see, it's covering all these other trees and plants so that blocks out their sunlight. So then there's native trees and everything that's dying there. So kudzu basically came in and took over. It was for a good reason. We wanted to control erosion, but now we have it everywhere in the South. Asian carp, don't worry about it. You don't have to identify why it's so good. I don't know as much about Asian carp and why it was brought over. But we'll talk about why invasives can take over as well. Zebra mussels, that's interesting. So the zebra mussels, I'm pretty sure, came by mistake. I believe they came in the bottom of ships because they have to bring in what's called bilge water. So they bring in the water and then they have to release it another place. But the mussels are overtaking everything. All right, so let's look at why would invasives become invasive? So they usually are R species, which means they're highly reproductive. They have lots and lots and lots of babies. They generally are pioneer species, which means they don't have to live on a lot. Again, they are generalist. They can survive in many places. Long-lived is helpful, but again, our species isn't always long-lived, so it doesn't have to. Be. High dispersal rate, so meaning it just keeps growing like that kudzu. Some can release a growth inhibiting chemical into the soil. That one's pretty specific, but that's all right. Generalists, they have high genetic variability, which is going to happen just due to their sheer number of organisms that they have. Now, another reason why, and I like to just talk about that blue side, you guys can look at the other side, but another reason why invasive species can be so harmful or how they can invade so easily is that they're not part of the food chain. They're not part of that ecosystem. They never have been. So the organisms that are there don't know to eat it. All right, and then it can basically take out another species that has lived there for a long time. It can kind of overtake that situation. So I find that very interesting. So what can we do about invasive species? Not buying, selling, trading wild species is good. There's actually an episode on one of the newer Magic School Bus where they talk about that, and something can be brought in just simply on your shoe and go into another environment, which is a problem. They talk about not bringing in, or they talk about not transporting wood, so like firewood. I always thought that was the weirdest thing before I started teaching this class. You'd see it on the back of buses and whatnot. I don't know if you guys have, but I have before. Like, don't transport firewood. It just seemed crazy. You shouldn't transport firewood over state lines or to from one forest to another, because there's going to be organisms living in that firewood, and if you then bring it to another place, you're now going to have the insect living in a new area, and it could take over that new area. On anything that you're bringing over, so like that bottom one, talking about your mountain bike, canoe, boat, your trailer, your motorhome, all of those things, if you're traveling different places, you need to be washing them so you don't bring back those invasive species. All very interesting. This is what I was talking about with the zebra mussels, which is what I'm pretty sure happened with zebra mussels. They are calling it ballast water. I've heard it called bilge water too, but basically you take it in at a port, right? And then you have it during the voyage, whatever. So it goes in. You have all these organisms from one spot. Then you travel because it helps with buoyancy or something. And it's something physics related. And then when you get to your destination port, you let it all go. And that's because you need to, because now you're bringing in all the cargo, which is going to allow it to be buoyant in the same way as the other one, if that makes sense. Anyways, the problem is that you're bringing in stuff in the water from one place and then you're releasing it at another place, which can cause invasive species to get there. All right, so that is the invasive species part. Let's talk about a little bit of the pollution. So we know that we have biomagnification and bioaccumulation. We talked about the bald eagle eggs with DDT that bioaccumulated. That's a problem. And so the higher up the food chain you go, the more that you have. That causes bald eagles to have a real big issue because it thinned their eggshells, which means they could die more easily, that the organisms wouldn't survive, and whatnot. We know that climate change, based on polar bears themselves, the polar bears need to be able to be over the water for when the seals come up to catch air. And so if there's less ice, it's almost counterintuitive. So there's less ice spaces, you then have more water spaces. So there's more places that the seals can come up, meaning a lower likelihood that the polar bears will be able to catch them because they could pop up in an area where the polar bears are not. That kind of makes sense. So if there's more ice, then there's less water for the seals to pop up in near land. If there is less ice, now there's more surface area of the water to pop up. Less chance for them to be able to survive and eat. I'm sorry. I'll try and go through these quickly, but these are just showing some ways that, I'll skip the slide when I talk about it, that's showing ways that people overexploit those organisms. Dang, Tucker, that's a really random fact. But that's really cool. How do you know that? Answer that later. How do you know that? So why do we want to preserve species? For one, they were here before we were, in my opinion. but they provide ecosystem services too. All right, so that's an important thing. They can be medicines. We can use them for economy, for tourism. They have intrinsic value just because they're beautiful, being there, they should be there and all that. That's just a cute picture. Aww, more cute pictures. They're living things. They should be able to be there. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's got to be an AQT fact. All right, I know these slides are all over the place, and I apologize for that. But when we talk about habitat and habitat destruction, one big thing is habitat fragmentation, which we talked about before. When we did the mining, we talked about the roads going through, you're fragmenting one habitat from another, which doesn't allow the genes to flow through. Okay, so there is an edge effect, which means when we have two different biomes right next to each other, you're going to actually increase the biodiversity in that area. But the issue now is that we're going to have two species, and they might start to geographically differ if they become far enough apart or their genes split up. So we talked about this as being genetic bottleneck effect when we talked about population, and the founder effect. So habitat fragmentation is a big, big issue. So when roads are built, houses are built, deforestation occurs, so we're making farms, all that causes habitat fragmentation. So what you can do to counteract habitat fragmentation, I haven't seen these in real life ever before, but there are some cool examples of this. So this is showing a green space on top of the highway so that animals can get across instead of getting hit by a car going through. Now, how do they know to go that way? It would take a while, and it would take animals getting hit for them to know not to go that way. So it does take a while, and it's not a perfect system. This one I love. I think it's really cool. So there's actually a lot of crabs that go across on whatever Christmas Island is. Anyways, they migrate in the South Pacific Ocean, and they build these ladders for these crabs, and so these crabs just go all the way up over top. You can see here, it's got like one line going, and these guys are coming back. It's just an interesting, I've always loved that picture. We are not going to talk about biogeography, island biogeography, because we've already talked about it. All right, CITES, that's what it's called, but it's the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. It was in 1973. 175 countries were there. There is a red list of organisms that are threatened, that are not allowed to be commercially traded as live specimens or their parts or products, and it restricts the trade on thousands of plants and animals. It is very hard to enforce because we are talking about over countries. So if you guys have seen Tiger King, right? People shouldn't be having those in their homes. I don't know what the laws and restrictions are. I have no idea what Carol Baskin was actually trying to do with her laws and whatnot. But if you claim, or I don't know how you become a zoo, you technically can have those animals. They are not supposed to be. Exotic animals should not be pets. Okay, Tucker, you don't have a pet polar bear. That would be really scary. And two, that kind of makes sense. I feel like the 3 feet of ice, that would be very interesting. All right, let's look at the Endangered Species Act. Another one is 1973, right? The other one was 1973. Yeah. Okay. So Endangered Species Act was a very big deal. And this, I think, does work a little bit better just because it's a United States law instead of a bunch of countries trying to say, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. And it's hard to track from one country to another when they're, being smuggled or whatnot. But like I told you before, there is a woodpecker and that land is preserved. So it sucks for the people who maybe wanted to build on the land, but it is protecting those animals. We're not going to talk about, we'll look at this, okay? The biggest thing that will help protect organisms is their habitat. Protecting an organism's habitat is going to be the most beneficial thing to protecting endangered species. Period, end of story. And that's because habitats, losing organisms' habitats is the number one cause of endangered and extinction. The habitat corridors are what that was what I just showed with the crabs and that green space atop the highway. There are wildlife refuges or sanctuaries. There can be issues there too because they still aren't necessarily endemic or native in that area. There isn't enough biodiversity possibly or species, genetic diversity, in that species. That can be a problem. People have issues with zoos and aquariums, and I understand that very much. I'm not necessarily for or against. I know you guys love the zoo. How zooing, I get it. But I know I've had students in the past that have some very serious issues with the zoos. Now, the Cincinnati Zoo is a very good zoo. They work on understanding the breeding. My cousin actually works with the polar bears to understand the breeding of the polar bears themselves. And so that can help species in the wild. They do a really good job of looking at DNA analysis so that they can keep genetic diversity. Another thing you have to think about with these larger zoos that are that have the correct scientists, that aren't like the Tiger King zoos and whatnot, is that they are doing the research. They are trying to get these animals back into the wild if they can. They are really pro getting these species off the endangered species list. Another thing that is good about the zoos is that there is something called, I think it's called an umbrella species. I know someone asked me about this before. But basically what it's saying is like the panda is a cute face. I know it's the face of the World Wildlife Federation. And if we can save the pandas, we're going to be saving their habitat, which is then going to save a lot of species underneath them. So a lot of times we pick one species and they become kind of like the ambassador for that region of the world, and that can become very helpful. All right, that is the end of the notes. Let me go back here. And I will sit here if you guys have more questions. We have covered everything in Unit 9. We've covered everything from Unit 1 to Unit 9 this whole entire year. I'm so excited. So now it's your guys' job to do the 7 scientific practices if you haven't done them already. Kind of looks weird being backwards. The 7 scientific practices. If you haven't taken the Unit 8 test, please do so. And then the Unit 9 test will be open on Thursday. The review is already ready for you. I cannot stress you guys enough how close we are to the end of this. I'm very excited. I have not checked the calendar that I sent out to the kids taking the AP exam, so I will. I probably should have done that already. I'm sorry. I hope no one signed up for today, which I think I had on there. Oops, let me get my Rocketbook to write down that to do. Sometimes the weekends I just do 0 work. I think that's normal. AP calendar. Got it? All right, I'll wait around if there's any questions about assignments, about the notes that I just talked about, because I know that was a lot, but we talked about invasive species. So what you need to know with them is what makes them invasive species, how do they survive, so those characteristics, and then endangered species, what makes organisms prone to being endangered or extinct, and also maybe some examples of organisms that are extinct or endangered. So we had like the dodo bird, the passenger pigeon, the black rhino went extinct a few years ago, and then also what humans are doing to decrease biodiversity. So that HIPCO is very important. Noah, I feel like the ones that we saw through Tiger King are like that. They're allowed to be considered a zoo. I don't know why. I don't know how that works. I don't know if it's just like an LLC. I'm not sure. But in certain places of the world, or in the United States, there's places that are zoos that are not like the zoo that you guys grew up with in Cincinnati. So we are blessed to have an amazing zoo that does conservation research and protects the animals and all these things. I would say that Joe Exotic's one and that Doc Antle's one would be very similar to like a SeaWorld type of situation. Only SeaWorld seemed like legitimate somewhat, but yeah, I don't think it was. I'll wait for any other questions. I'm so excited not to do any more YouTube Live. Maybe I'll have to do them next year. I don't know. I'll wait for a few more questions. No, you can on your own. That's fine, but you know he's not there anymore, so it's technically someone else's, and I don't know if it's finished with its construction yet. Plus, isn't that it's all the way in Oklahoma, right? I'm pretty sure, anyways. I really messed up on you guys' trips this year. No, it's going great so far. Sunday was a little bit crazy. I think I'm done with the kid portion of quarantine, so that'd be nice if I could move on to another portion of quarantine. Made it 6 weeks and I think I'm losing it. So, thanks. How's your week? I'll wait for a few more minutes. I bet. I feel like when you're just like sitting around, you get kind of tired. All right, I'm gonna peace out. Miss you guys a lot. Last one, yay!